And then I'm going to attempt to share my screen, but it needs to be the right one. There we go. Okay, great. I'm glad folks have been able to get on. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Great. So this is what we'll get through hopefully in the next hour. I got a fairly intimate group here, so feel free to ask questions, but we will also have time for questions at the end. So I'll give a bit of background about the pilot, then you'll hear from Ben Tuppen at Share Oxford about their experience as a library of things and developing the resource guide. You'll hear from each of the sites, have time for questions, and then we'll wrap it up with some additional resources. So as I said, I'm Catherine from CAG Oxfordshire, and so we are a network of community groups across the county that are mostly volunteer-led, but also include other sorts of social enterprises, charitable organizations, but all working in some way to make a difference in their local community, and mostly with a focus on climate action. There are over 100 of us across the county. You can see it's a pretty good, there's 5 districts within the county, and it's pretty good distribution across. There's obviously a lot there in Oxford that you can see, but aside from that, good sort of distribution outside. And again, these groups work on all sorts of climate action issues: waste, transport, food, energy, biodiversity, tree planting, social and economic justice initiatives. We have had a long-standing partnership with the County Council and receive our core funding from the county. And the county, hello, welcome, we're just getting started. The county provided the additional funding for this pilot outside of even our core funding. And their interest is, again, in moving further up the waste hierarchy through different circular economy initiatives. And this work with piloting a library of things complements work that we've done somewhat recently to help establish more repair cafes around the county as well. And so Ben can share, but there is a sort of a nice synergy between repair cafes and libraries of things. So I mentioned the county is interested in moving further up the waste hierarchy, and there's been this move, as probably you all are aware, away from this sort of reuse, reduce, reuse, recycle model, and more about the prevention aspects of keeping, not having to rely on new products, keeping products in use for longer. And that is everything from, big appliances and furniture to smaller electrical items, clothing, that sort of thing. And so I think the Library of Things obviously fits nicely into that top tier of the model, and trying to get people to not necessarily buy new for sorts of small one-off projects, but using what exists within the community. And we'll talk about some of sort of the trade-offs and the ethos behind sort of the different decisions when that come into, again, sort of what is the ethos of a library of things, and don't necessarily want to undercut small businesses, hire shops, things like that, but also making sure that it's a value and an asset for the community. So Share Oxford has been around since 2019. And the sort of red dots are the outline of the county. And so we wanted to see if we were interested in CAGs who might be positioned and ready to take on a library of things in other parts of the county. And so the 3 pilots that you see are reasonably well distributed. Obviously, it's only 3 and it's a big county. But Bicester Green, Sustainable Wantage, and Oxford Wood Recycling were the 3 sites that we approached, the 3 groups that we approached, who we'd either sort of heard through the grapevine that they might be interested in the library of things, or had already sort of had inklings about wanting to do this and having space and maybe some capacity to take this on. It was a fairly short pilot, sort of 6 months of planning, and only in the last month have the 3 sites launched. But to get them there, we were able to provide grant funding that, again, they could use for staffing cost or equipment, software, any of the sort of setup support that they needed to establish their library of things. CAG, as sort of the coordinator, we facilitated monthly calls, again, sort of what is the scope of the issues that we want to discuss. And Ben at Share Oxford played a critical role in sort of guiding and providing guidance and experience on what the experience at Share had been to date. And sort of, again, yeah, kind of someone to kind of play that backbone support of bringing the group together, and allowing for those sort of cohort learnings that you don't necessarily get if it's just one site kind of working on its own. And we had things like a site visit to Share for the group to see their library of things in action. So it's been a really, I would say, rewarding 6 months of, yeah, having ideas bounced off each other. One question leads to another, that sort of thing. So hopefully the next few minutes, you'll sort of benefit the distillation of those conversations that has led us to this point. And so with that, I will turn it over to Ben.
Thanks very much, Catherine, and great to see everybody, and lovely to be able to talk through what we've been up to. So yeah, I'm representing Share Oxford. We started in 2019, founded by Alex and Morris, a couple of friends who'd been getting involved in waste and repair throughout Oxford. And yeah, this project's been a fantastic opportunity for us just to consolidate what we're doing, and as Catherine mentioned, just the chance to sort of bounce our ideas off these other partners, all of whom have more experience than us in what they're doing. So it helps us really understand the context of the library of things, sanity check what we're up to, and prepare for keeping it all going. So yeah, the first stage of our life has been very much about Morris, who volunteered all of his sort of retired time to the service, to literally staffing it, to doing deliveries to people, sort of getting the whole thing off the ground. And by 2021, he knew he didn't want to put as much time into everything. I'd asked him how does he go on holiday, and he just said, well, I don't. So it was always slightly unsustainable in those first bits. With the help of some COVID funding, I came on board as project coordinator, and we now have Christine running the library. So we've got that sort of crucial 2 staff members who we can offer a bit of a backbone to it, as well as about 30 volunteers supporting us in running the library and managing all the repair cafes. So we sort of inherited the collection from Morris, a mixture of stuff, practical through to fun, and we're understanding where the demand is, where we make a difference and what impact we have. Currently open a day and a half a week, Thursday and Saturday, and we're one of the big benefits of this project is helping us get the foundations in place to open a 3rd day. We're just going to get a bit more funding in place, and hopefully that will allow us to scale. And just to give a sense of where we're at, currently 30% of our costs are covered by the hiring fees from the library. So we know we need to scale the library of things and add other activities in order to become financially sustainable. So this has been a really valuable project for us to learn from everybody as we grow ourselves. So yeah, I thought I'd just give a brief overview of the resource guide structure, which started as a brain dump of everyone going, right, Ben, what do we need to know to get started? And again, it's been great to just dig into each of these sections and think about what we're doing, whether we're able to articulate ourselves strongly enough, and being challenged by the other members of the group's been fantastic. So we spent time talking about our purpose, and again, it'd be great to hear each group talk about what the library adds to what they're already doing. For us, we're very much driven by the desire to reduce waste, but we're conscious that there is that environmental and the social benefit of helping people who maybe couldn't access stuff, that they couldn't buy stuff for themselves, have access as well. So we're understanding how those two fit together. With that purpose in mind, we then talked about the customers and the market we operate in, and it is a changing world. It's fantastic to see more libraries of things coming out there, starting thinking through how many libraries does Oxford need to be really accessible to people, that sort of stuff. Obviously, the range really important. What things do you have? And we're still having had the entrepreneurial phase of whatever we get donated, let's give it a try. And we're now in the stage of going, right, which things don't suit the library. Maybe it's difficult to keep them safe. Maybe, you know, we've got a PlayStation that we're going to sell because actually it's got a hard drive with people's data on it. There's all those sort of details of what you want in your library. We talked through policies and insurance, and I know Wantage have got some fantastic detail there, so I'll let them discuss their learnings on that side. From our point of view, it's been a big benefit to use some of this funding on health and safety consultancy to make sure that we're sort of, we're stepping all that area forward as well, and we look forward to, we shared what we have so far, and we'll do the same with anything else that's being added in as we review our policies and risk assessments. We talked through staffing and space. And just thinking through, you know, the work to do to set up items right first time with the information to get a really great hiring experience. We've made the decision that we've got paid staff in key roles to make sure we have that sustainability. I know there's other libraries who are looking to run entirely with volunteers. It's interesting to see pros and cons of each approach there. Shared our thoughts on that side, and you know, I'm very happy to have that conversation. We looked at systems. Interestingly, everybody's chosen the one we aren't using, so that's in itself has been a useful exercise. And actually, we've learned a lot about the system we do have, helping get the financial reporting right as well by spending the time with the others here. The whole marketing and outreach side, how we spread the message, how we make sure we're clear what we're doing. There's been some really great conversations, and then sort of rounding it all off by coming back to your purpose. Are you capturing the data you need to be able to measure and report your impact? So again, the resource guide's got our thoughts of where we're at, and it's been really valuable from our point of view to discuss all of these pieces with the members of this project, spend some time together. Actually, you know, we've sharpened up what we're doing and hopefully helped everybody step forward into setting up their own libraries. So yeah, we're looking forward from here to having a community of libraries and things in Oxfordshire, and you know, really keen to keep building those relationships with all the partners here, as well as, you know, beyond Oxfordshire. And I think we'll come to the end with thinking if it's going to be useful to people to set up libraries. Very happy to be involved in quarterly calls or something like that, that we can, you know, we can share what we're doing and help other people on the journey as well. So yeah, that's a brief whiz through what we've done from the Share Oxford side. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ben. Celia, over to you.
Lovely, thank you. So I'm Celia. I'm the centre manager at Bicester Green. We're Centre for Sustainability and Reuse and Skills. So we've got several aspects to what we do. Essentially, we take in donations of materials that would otherwise go to waste and use those as a catalyst for learning in our workshops. So we have electrical, bicycle and wood workshops where our volunteers, members of the public who want to volunteer with us, can come in and learn skills from each other or share skills that they have, particularly in the wood workshop where, you know, we've got carpenters and joiners, and you know, that those sort of skills aren't necessarily being passed on from generation to generation, and so we sort of hope to do a little bit of that in our community. We focus very much on refill, repair, reuse, repurpose and recycling, and deliver it to the community through our workshops and our shop. And so we've just moved premises, and so we're in a nice big, much bigger place where our shop can flourish, and we can better display all the things that we make and repair. And of course, it meant that we can incorporate our library of things, which we've been discussing for quite some time. So that's sort of a brief little bit about who we are. That's our mission statement at the bottom there, which our board went at great pains to come up with, but powered by volunteers to provide the community with access to knowledge and resources that collectively make a positive change to our environment. So it does sum it up quite nicely. More specific, we were absolutely thrilled when we were approached to be part of this pilot scheme. We've been discussing it for some time, and we've been hoping to be able to you know, launch a library of things, because it very much fits in nicely with everything that we already do. We repair and sell a huge range of electricals and tools, and it just seemed like a natural progression for us to, to take that next step and to do, set up a library of things. We didn't have the space. So when the opportunity to move premises and to where we are now came up, it was perfect for us to actually do the library of things at the same time. So the timing was absolutely spot on. The ethos for our library of things, much like all the other library things across the country, I believe, but prevent the need to buy things. We've all got lots of things and stuff clogging up our shelves at home, and we don't need most of it. So reduce the need to own the stuff, sharing the resources of the planet, share them around rather than add more and more waste, essentially, for everybody to be able to join a sharing community, and clearly to reduce waste, CO2, and the impact on climate change. So I imagine that the other two pilots will sort of say the same things around their ethos and what they're hoping to gain from it. So with regards to the community, obviously we're already quite well ensconced within our local community, both in several ways, with them coming to us to shop, to refill, for us to repair, but also members of the community being part of Bicester Green. So our library of things is, as I say there, it's an extension of what we already offer to the community, focusing very much on it being affordable and accessible. So I mentioned that we've been looking at the solution for quite some time, quite a long time. We're just enormously excited to be able to actually have the space to be able to set this up, and two, to actually be able to do it. But share some of our findings and our challenges. There was quite a few of them. So I think the first one, it's hard work. Be under no illusions if anyone's going to set this up. It's really, really hard work. You'll need sufficient space. And I know some of the cohort have been really, really clever with their space, far more clever than we have. But I think that's maybe because we've got a bit more room to play with. But it's not just about having the space, it's about having secure space. Ours, as you can see from this picture, is within the shop floor, so public can access it. And if this sounds like where you might be setting it up, piece of advice from our experience: cordon it off some way. Make sure that people can't pick it up and grab it, because things have moved, and some things we haven't found where they've moved to yet. It's quite key for us, really, because opposite, you can't see in this photo, opposite there are bicycles which are for sale. So it's a natural path down through our shop for people to actually be able to to walk and to have curiosity, and people are very curious. It takes a lot more time than you think it's going to take to set this up. Plan and then do a bit more planning, pull together and engage a bigger team than you actually think you might need, and then allow yourself double the amount of time to bring it all together, the inventory and the software. We spent quite a lot of time, the cohort here, discussing and comparing the different softwares that are out there. And as Ben said, the three of us pilot sites all went with the different software to the one that Share were already using. So hopefully we've done some of the hard work for you. But we've sort of been logging some of the hours that the volunteers and the team have spent actually just logging the inventory, and already it's 48 hours of actual time spent just logging the inventory. So yeah, because you want to get it right. So it's worth spending that time, but just make sure you've got people who are willing to spend that amount of time. Have a process for everything. This way everyone knows what to do, and more importantly, what comes next. If you know why you're doing something, so if it's uploading onto whichever software you use, so Lend Engine, know what it's going to look like at the end. Don't be afraid to have a look at other people's library of things. Go on and have a look, because then you know what you're trying to achieve. And it's so much easier if you actually make this information available. So speaking from very personal experience here, make sure that your library of things is the only project or initiative that you're working on at that time. So we moved half of our organisation from our previous premises to our new premises that you can see in the picture at the same time as trying to actually launch a library of things, which is great because the new premises meant we could have the library of things, but trying to do all of that at the same time was enormously stressful and doubly time consuming. So that's probably been our biggest challenge, is just actually trying to do everything all at once. Resource, I've spoken about time and people, but obviously funding is essential. We've been fantastically supported by CAG and Oxfordshire County Council, and we've also been fortunate enough to receive some funding from local businesses and other funding pots as well as our regular trading activity, because obviously we are established as a trading organisation. But without multiple sources of resource, it would have been enormously challenging. Robust comms. Again, this is very much personal and very raw experience. Have all your comms channels in place and make sure that they're really robust before launching. So social media, website, PR, mail shots, they're all really key to launching. We were staggeringly unlucky that our website got hacked, and so was our Facebook. And having a subdomain as our library of things URL meant that without the website actually working as it should, it was a little bit difficult to launch our library of things, and also to spread the word, because our Facebook page, we have 5,500 followers, and not having access to that 5,500 followers is a little, it hurts. It does make it rather difficult. But fortunately, I've got the other social media hasn't been affected. We have a very solid database for emails and some really good PR channels and editorial opportunities in the local media that I was able to fall back on. And so all is not lost, losing two of your main communication channels, but just make sure that you've got everything and that it is as robust as it can possibly be. So basically just publicize your library as much as you can through whatever channels you have available, and don't underestimate the power of word of mouth, because that is just the best thing that you could possibly have. That's it really for me. Great,
thank you, Celia. And hopefully your personal challenges are someone else's personal gains. So we appreciate the openness there. Okay, Jess, over to you. And Jess, I will share these slides out afterwards. So in the interest of time, don't feel like you have to get through all of it. But yeah, over to you.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Jess. I was brought on to coordinate the setup of the Library of Things for Sustainable Wantage. So that's what I'm going to focus on, exactly kind of what I did once I started. Just to give you an idea, because I know Celia mentioned sort of time and resource, I would say I've probably spent sort of 20 to 30 hours per month working on this. It's been a sort of part-time job for me. So the first decision we made was which software. I will be the third person to mention. We didn't go with the same one as SHAREOxford. Functionality-wise, all three that we looked at were broadly similar, but there was quite a big difference in price. So as you can see there, Lend Engine came out quite significantly cheaper than the others. And obviously being sort of not-for-profit organisation, cost was a big consideration for us. So we did go with Lend Engine, partly because of that low price point, but also, Catherine, if you could click for me. Thank you. There are a few additional features, customizable CSS and JavaScript, so we could sort of style it to make it look more like our branding. A really supportive Facebook group where you can ask questions and someone who's using the software will get back to you. And a big one, they're very, very sort of sustainable themselves. And as you can see, sort of their profit is all directed towards minimizing climate change. Thank you. So before I started, Jo Joe at Sustainable Wantage already had quite a few items collected in preparation for setting up. So we had a few key considerations. As you can see, we don't have a huge amount of space there at the mix. You can see our shelves in the picture there. So the main considerations really were, could we store it? Would we be able to check and maintain it easily? Did we have the resource through various volunteers in the repair cafe to keep those items working? And a really big one, was it already available elsewhere? As Catherine mentioned at the beginning, we don't want to step on other people's toes, take business away from other local businesses. And also whether we were comfortable with non-trained individuals using the item. So the hedge trimmer didn't make it into our library of things for that reason. So I created an inventory in Excel, which was based on the fields in Lend Engine. Main reasons being to ensure consistency across item listings, so that they would all look roughly the same. It also means that it was accessible to any staff or volunteers who were not using the software. So someone could sort of, measure all the items and just fill in the measurements field for us on the spreadsheet. And it's also allowed us to track things that are not covered by the software, such as pat testing, for example. In terms of pricing, we wanted it to be low enough to make it affordable and also a better option for people than buying new. Obviously, thanks to Amazon, you can get pretty much anything at quite a low cost. So we wanted to be able to compete with that. But we also needed the pricing to be high enough, A, to be viable, so to help cover the cost of software and also the Stripe payment integration, which charges like 20p and a small percentage of each transaction. But we also wanted the items to be seen as quality. So we worried that if the price was too low, people might think, oh, it doesn't matter if I break it or don't return it because it's so cheap. We wanted to reflect that these are good quality items. And we also wanted the pricing to be consistent and transparent. So for us, we've set a formula. So a 7-day hire costs between 5 to 10% of the item's true value. And that 5 to 10% varies depending on how much work is involved to check and maintain the item. And you can see there, so all the information from the inventory, and that's how it looks for one of our listings. And for the pressure washer there, it's £3 to borrow it for 2 days, which we think is reasonable. So the very important admin bits, health and safety, we're pat testing all electrical items between uses and recording the outcome of those pat tests in our inventory. Any items which we deem to be potentially hazardous, we've mentioned this in the item description. We've also given recommendations for use. So you can see there with the pressure washer, don't direct the jet at animals. And we've also given additional safety advice if we felt it was needed. Terms and conditions, the bulk of the wording was borrowed from another library of things. I did email them to ask if that was okay, but it seems to me that seems quite standard that people just take what they need. Obviously, we updated it to reflect our processes. We were very careful with the wording. We wanted to encourage borrowers to report any damage, not try and repair things themselves. So we've tried to sort of word it in a way that explains that there might be repercussions if people are careless and damage things, but actually first and foremost, we would rather work with them to get that item sorted. We've also added in disclaimers for some items, which are within the terms and conditions, but also linked to from the item description. So for example, a food related item, it links to this little disclaimer here, just to sort of say that with some items, even though we are checking them, if it's going to be used to serve food, just give it a wash yourself before using it. We found that our insurance company weren't able to look at or comment on the wording of our terms and conditions. So the approach that worked best in the end was just to actually go to them with some specific questions and then amend our terms and conditions accordingly. So for example, if someone borrows one of our items and damages their property, is this going to be covered under the insurance policy? Many of the items that we're lending out are secondhand. So we decided to carry out volunteer checks where we offered it to the community. People could borrow the item for free and then complete a short survey after using it. This allowed us to add in extra sort of YouTube videos if people found something particularly difficult to use. And we're going to be repeating those checks every 6 months. We should have started the check sooner. With all the will in the world, people are busy, and we still have some items that we haven't got around to checking, even though we've launched. So the first check on those items will be a volunteer check, essentially. When going live, so first of all, there was training for the staff and volunteers at the mix. I created a staff guide. There is a guide on Lend Engine, but I wanted to make it sort of specific to how we were using the software. We have daily checklists, flowcharts, and little quick guides just to help people quickly check how to check an item out, for example. And in terms of marketing, we created a couple of videos. So one on what is a library of things, and another on how to use Lend Engine from a borrower's point of view. We also created some flyers, obviously used social media, and sort of spread the word through local like-minded organisations. If we were going back to the beginning to start again, I would recommend starting with the terms and conditions. For me, it's not the most interesting part. I prefer putting things on websites myself. But it definitely shapes how you do the other bits. So because the terms and conditions, we did them a bit later, in some cases, I then had to go back and change item listings, for example, to reflect those changes. Then definitely decide which items you want to include. And if you are doing volunteer checks, which we would highly recommend on secondhand items, do those straight away. Then do your inventory, get the items on the website and go live.
Great. Thank you, Jess. Okay, turning it over to Mike.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike. I'm from Oxford Wood Recycling. I'm afraid I don't have any pictures, so you'll just have to listen to me. Part of the reason is that most of our items in the library are currently in a shopping trolley because storage has become an issue, and boxes of tools in a shopping trolley is not very exciting. So I'll try and liven it up through what I say. We're based in Abingdon in South Oxfordshire, and our mission essentially is to care for our environment and transform lives. We collect waste wood from around the county, and then we use reclaimed wood to produce tables, chairs, that kind of thing, or we sell timber in our retail space. We run courses and we host repair cafes. So a huge proportion of our customers are already woodworkers or DIYers, but we're often asked, and have always been asked by customers for advice about the types of wood to use, about their projects, you know, where could they get tools from, etc. So when the opportunity came up to be part of the pilot to set up a library, yeah, we were incredibly keen. You know, we couldn't wait to get started. Our ethos for setting up such a library, very much the same as what Celia was saying. One of the first things that we did is we asked our local community what they wanted to borrow from us, which threw up a whole number of surprising results, actually. For example, clamps were incredibly popular, which we just never thought they would be, because they are relatively cheap to buy. But, you know, really shaped our thinking in terms of what we were going to offer within the library. And we decided that actually we would just offer tools. So we've kind of changed the T from Library of Things to Library of Tools, and kind of rebranded it that way, just so that we can stick with our area of expertise, as it were. When we were looking at you know, setup costs, time required, tools, I went into a bit of a blind panic, I won't lie. We've had amazing support from Oxfordshire County Council and from CAG, but we realised that we needed sort of more, if you like. So we set up a crowdfunder campaign, which led to us getting some match funding from Sovereign Housing, which is local to where we are. And we were amazed by how our community responded, both in terms of financial donations, second-hand tools, and also time. You know, we've had a number of volunteers that have come forward and said that they want to be involved in helping us get it set up. So we then had to get it set up, and it was, you know, as people have already said, there's lots to do in terms of insurances, processes, getting all the details uploaded. The guys on this call CAG and the other providers been incredibly helpful to me. I've done most of it on my own at this end. Therefore, it took a heck of a lot longer to set up than originally anticipated. So a word of advice would be, if you are that way inclined, put together a bit of a Gantt chart of what you need to do and sort of plan it accordingly. You know, we launched a couple of weeks ago, and just so excited to actually get it off the ground. You know, we've done some promotion, but there's still a lot to do, but we are planning on doing a fair bit of the promotion through sort of almost our normal promotion channels, as well as specific library specific things. So, you know, if we're putting on about a piece of wood, or the fact that we've had a delivery of scaffold boards, which is a very popular type of wood for shelving. You know, a lot of people will ask us to sand and finish for them, but actually they can now do that themselves. And I think that's, for us, that's one of the most exciting parts about the project, is what it will mean to our community, because a key part of our ethos is to empower our local community to care for the environment. So this is another tool that will allow us to do that. Now we have launched, essentially the running of the library is being passed over to the retail team. So we're lucky that we've got a body of staff here, and then the volunteers are coming in to supplement that, and they will do all of the checks, all of the checking in, all of the checking out, as it were. We've initially launched using only new tools because they were kind of easier to check. You know, they come with a certain level of quality guaranteed. So our next big push is to check all of the second-hand donations, test them, make sure that they work, make sure that they still meet safety standards, they've got all the blades or the drill bits, etc., required, you know, and get replacement parts if needs be. So we're kind of hoping it's going to be a bit of a slow burner, that we'll be able to add things to it as we go over time, to sort of keep momentum bubbling along. So, you know, I think in 6 months, a year, what I would be saying to you guys would probably be very different, because we'll be learning as we go. But as I say, at the moment, it's a very exciting time, and we're delighted to have launched it and have this string to our bow.
Great, thanks, Mike. Okay, now over to you all. So one thing that I meant to do at the beginning that I didn't was, if you, while we are going through questions and answers, you can either put them in the chat or you can raise your hand. But if you wanted to also say who you are and where you're from in the chat, and that would give us a little bit of a sense of that as well. But yeah, any questions? Feel free to go in the weeds. That's what this group has been doing. So no question too weedy.
I've got a comment.
Go ahead.
Just from the perspective of somebody that's just dipped into it a little bit as a volunteer. So from the other side of it, it seems we've got really good guide, and luckily Jess was really on the ball. So we've got this wonderful folder to refer to, which I think is going to be really useful. But I think we do need a dedicated training session with all the volunteers together, if we can. I'd recommend that in a quiet time without any other interruptions, because there is quite a lot of detail, and I think it is quite straightforward once you've got that detail nailed, but it's a lot at the start if you're completely fresh into it. So that would be something I'd like to do at Sustainable Wantage. And then the software, longer term, it's a shame we didn't all select the same software, I think, because I don't know if in the future there'd be the option for us to integrate, you know, so you could see what other libraries had. If somebody, you know, if somebody didn't have what you had, I don't know if that would be an option in the future. And we might get a bit tied in, because the software we're using is perfect for starting out, and the price is perfect, so it's very appealing and it's got the functionality we need. It's a little bit clunky, I think, not quite as flexible longer term, so we might want to change in the future, but to upgrade with the one we've got, I think is, nod or shake your head, Jess, but is it £20 a month if we want to get more functionality? So if this is successful and it grows, then we're down the line, we're going to have to make a choice about paying that money or changing the software. So just if other people were starting out, it might be something they'd want to think about.
Yeah, great, man. Thanks for that. Ben, do you want to, oh, Joe, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just to come back on that, Jess did a really thorough check of the softwares available and what their sort of capacity was short-term and long-term. So we did decide not to use what Share Oxford were doing for various reasons. But yeah, it's definitely worth making sure you've made your now plan and your future plan in that choice.
Thanks, Joe. Ben, do you want to touch on, to the degree you remember, the sort of discussions we had about integrating sites with each other versus sort of signposting?
Sure, yeah. So firstly, just a really quick thing on the software is that we're on a previous deal that's no longer available. So that was a bit of a sort of no-brainer for everybody to move away from what we're using. But yeah, we felt that there's a lot of complexity once you get into the, if we were to offer a sort of integrated service together, then you throw in all the questions of logistics and not just the software being integrated, but our T's and C's and our cost base and all sorts of things like that. So we felt it would be good to promote together and have a really clear sense of we're a community of libraries and other people might have what you need. But sort of operationally was one question. And then second was sort of impact, that if you're having to travel around the county to get access to something relatively small, does it actually fit our environmental impact anyway? So that was where we thought the mixture of the complexity and the sort of question marks over how the impact goes was why we'd start separated. But certainly as we get into it as a county, it's going to be really interesting to see how that comes back. And there's some other sharing platforms with peer-to-peer stuff going on that we could integrate with as well. So definitely something that will stay on the agenda.
Great, thanks, Ben. Question in the chat. Are any of you aware of self-hosted software which you can download and run yourself? I'm seeing a lot of pensive noise.
It was this, I didn't see who asked the question. Hi, Gaston and Tim. I'm aware of other cloud platforms like ShareB where there are just fees if you're taking money and it's completely free. And there was another one that I forgot, borrow.me, I think has just appeared. So I'm aware of those. I'm not aware of software that you host on your own server. There may well be an area we didn't look at though.
Any follow-up to that, Kirsten?
Thank you. we thought, well, Tim here, who's off camera,
Sorry.
thought he'd found one somewhere in the past. We've been thinking about this for a while, and we haven't got a note of what it was, so we're trying to rediscover what it was we thought we found, but you obviously haven't come across anything. So
Well, look, just be useful to have that up our sleeve if we need it.
yeah.
Great, thanks. Okay, question from Melissa. Did I miss any information about membership versus pay as you go? I don't know who wants to take that one.
I'm happy to. We've decided to go with pay as you go, simply because we wanted to make it as accessible as possible to our local community, because there are some areas of deprivation. To make sure that everyone could access just what they needed when they needed it, rather than being tied into a membership that they don't necessarily use. So that was our thinking. The others might have a different viewpoint, but that's where we got to when we thought about it.
I think me and Joe thought similarly. We sort of discussed whether membership would be a good option. But particularly as we're trying to keep our prices quite low anyway, it would be difficult to know, how much to charge people for a membership. and what happens if they don't need anything in a particular month. It just, so I think we decided pay as you go was sort of fairer for us.
Yeah, we offer both pay as you go and a membership, which is an annual membership, and you can take out as many, do as many loans as you want for that amount. So being able to offer both, it sort of made sense from our perspective to do both.
And I think Share do both as well.
Yeah, we've ended up focusing on pay as you go, and we just have almost sponsorship membership, so people can pay £5 or £10 a month and they get discounts when they do hire. But it was initially offered as a sort of deal to incentivize more use, but actually it's all about stuff you don't do very often. And I wonder if this is because we're in a bigger city as well. We don't have that ongoing relationship with many of our customers. So yeah, it's essentially pay as you go with an opportunity for a few deals if you're happy to support us, and we go that way with it.
Mem, did I see your hand?
Yeah, I was curious. Ben said £5 or £10. Celia, you said a yearly rate. Are you happy to say what that is?
Yeah, it's £80 a year.
For as many hires as they want.
As many hires as they want, yeah. And that's basically I got a good steer from the Library of Stuff up in Hull, and that's what they do. But interestingly, when chatting to them, he did say that they have a lot more pay as you go than they do on the annual membership. So yeah, I think most people are sort of geared towards the pay as you go concept, really.
Yeah, that's absolutely in line with what we found as well.
Great, thanks both. Question from Helen. Do you think it's realistic to run a library of things without paid staff?
I was interested, I think Guildford's Zero Carbon Guildford, or whatever they call themselves, I think they're entirely volunteer on their whole operation, and they've got a small library of things in there. My main thought would be around the type of risky items you choose to, it's around the health and safety side that so we've gone the route of having Morris doing it all himself into your paid team. I don't know, those of you who are working with volunteers will have more of a sense of what works well with paid staff and what works well with volunteers. But for us, we felt, particularly as we're growing into learning this sort of stuff, and we're, as a new organisation, we're having to build the sorts of processes that other people have. Wood recycling will already have a lot of health and safety on site already. We felt that core team was necessary to build that in.
Just from our experience, I think you could possibly run it without paid staff if you're well set up and have really clear processes. But from our point of view, it depends how many other things you're trying to do. We would never have got started, excuse me, if we hadn't had Jess being able to give it so much time. So even just being able to pay Jess for a day a week made a huge difference to us being able to get this up and running.
Yeah, good. Anyone else want to input on that?
Just to say, probably depends a lot on your volunteers as well. If you've got volunteers with plenty of time on their hands that are reliable week in, week out, then that's a different scenario to those that sort of drift in and out.
Yeah, great point. Any other questions? Okay, well, we're right on time, so that's great. So the last thing that I thought I would share, if I can, is just on the CAG website, if you go under projects, we have a Library of Things tab, and it links to each of the 4 Library of Things, and we will also host our resource guide up here. So this will be a place that you can come back to and check out the other sites. And then just in terms of next steps and other opportunities, we are going to trial something sort of like in the style of Ask Me Anything, where quarterly each one of the 4 the participants in this pilot will host just kind of a drop-in session for people to ask those very sort of nuts and bolts type questions. So we'll send that information out as a follow-up. And yeah, just encourage you, if you're in the area, to check out the different sites. I know some of you have already, and that's great. And I think all 4 of the groups on this call would be happy to welcome you and show you around a bit, just speaking on behalf of them without actually asking them. But they're a fairly friendly bunch. So yeah, I would encourage you to get out and see them in action. Great. Well, yeah, be in touch if you have any questions. Oh, question, is Bucks Council in contact? Yes, I have actually spoken to them probably in the last 3-4 months or so. So not about this specifically, but about sort of a network of community groups more broadly. So
okay, thank you. I think they're about 3 years behind you probably in terms of where we've got to, but interested to know. So is that Phoebe Risen you've spoken to?
it was.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Good. All right, thank you all. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Great to see you all.
Thank you. It's been a real eye-opener.
Bye.